Ever feel like the English language is just huge, like this giant mountain range you have to climb?
Oh, absolutely. So many words. It's easy to feel, well, completely lost right at the start.
Yeah, exactly. But what if I told you there's a sort of base camp? Maybe around 100 essential words.
A foundational set, you mean?
Right. A core that gives you a surprisingly strong foothold,
Mm,
helps you navigate much faster than you'd think.
that's a powerful idea.
And that's what we're digging into today. We're looking at the Foundational English Lexicon Study Guide and Mastering English, your foundational lexicon.
Two great resources on this.
Our mission really is to unpack why focusing on these basic words is such an efficient, powerful strategy if you're just starting out. Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay. So this idea of a foundational lexicon, it's compelling, right? Because it taps into something fundamental about language.
Which is,
Well, frequency.
Hmm.
Words aren't all used equally. Our sources both point this out. A surprisingly small number of words appear again and again,
which
constantly.
is everyday English.
Exactly. These aren't, obscure academic terms. They're the absolute building blocks, the core stuff you hear and read all the time.
And Mastering English has this great analogy. Building a house.
Ah, yes.
I remember that one.
They say something like, without a strong foundation and the right basic materials, bricks, cement, wood, the house will never stand.
Mm.
Learning a language is much the same. It really clicks, doesn't it? These words are your starter toolkit.
Absolutely. And that image really highlights the efficiency part. I mean, you wouldn't start decorating the attic before the foundation's poured, right?
Uh-huh. No, definitely not.
And it's similar with language, trying to tackle like really complex vocabulary before you've got the basics down. That's just going to lead to frustration, slow you right down.
Right. Okay, so let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets kind of mind-blowing.
The frequency data.
Yeah, the sources say that knowing just the 100 most common words, that can get you understanding around half of everyday spoken English. 50%.
It's pretty staggering when you think about it. And then if you bump that up to 1,000 words, you're looking at maybe 70, even 80% comprehension for general texts.
It is a surprisingly small number for such a huge leap in understanding.
Isn't it?
What's fascinating here, I think, is how this mirrors principles you see elsewhere. Like the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule.
Oh, right. Like 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort.
Exactly. Or how a few core products might drive most of a company's profit. In language, these high-frequency words are your high-impact tools. By focusing there first, well, you get a much faster entry point
Into understanding and actually speaking.
into understanding and basic communication. Yeah. It's way more effective than just, learning words randomly from a dictionary.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, okay, both sources are really clear on this next point. Just like reading a list of these words isn't the magic bullet.
Definitely not.
Mastering English says it straight up. Simply reading through this list once will not build your vocabulary.
Yep. Passive reading isn't enough.
So, what do we need to do? What are the active steps beyond just knowing these words exist?
Okay, so the key is active engagement. It's about doing things with the words.
Like what?
Well, several things come up. One big one is context. The Mastering English Guide puts it well. Never learn a word in isolation, if possible.
Okay.
Always look at the example sentences provided. You need to see how the word actually works. Its grammar, its different meanings and action.
Right, not just a translation. Okay, so context is one. What other hands-on things do they push? What can you, the listener, actually do?
So, yeah, building on that, pronunciation is vital. Listening, maybe using online dictionaries, especially for those little function words we'll probably talk about later. They can be tricky. Flashcards are mentioned, particularly with spaced repetition systems. That helps lock them into long-term memory.
Okay, that makes sense. SRS systems.
And crucially, focusing on meaning and usage, not just a direct translation back to your native language.
Usage, right. How it fits.
Then there's active recall. Trying to pull the word out of your own brain before you check the answer. That really strengthens the memory trace.
Okay, like testing yourself.
Exactly. And finally, actually using them. Write simple sentences. Speak simple sentences. Look for these specific words when you're reading simple texts or listening to easy audio.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Why is all that active stuff so much better than just, reading the list over and over? What's the difference?
Well, think about it. When you just passively read, your brain isn't really working very hard to retrieve anything.
Okay.
But active learning, that forces your brain to build stronger connections, neural pathways. Learning in context helps you link the word to a situation, Active recall strengthens the path to that word.
Ah,
Using the word yourself reinforces its meaning and how it fits grammatically. It's actually about making the learning a bit more effortful. It feels harder sometimes, but that effort is what leads to deeper, more lasting memory.
effortful learning. Got it. Now, something else the sources highlight is the role of these essential function words.
Yes, the glue.
Yeah, like a an, the, is, am, are, to, of, in, on, and, but, or. They seem so basic. Why are they so critical? Shouldn't you focus on the big meaning words first?
Well, if we connect this back to the house analogy again,
Okay.
these function words are like the mortar between the bricks. They might not seem like much on their own, no strong individual meaning maybe,
Right.
but they provide the essential grammatical structure. They link the content, words, the nouns, verbs, adjectives together so they make sense.
So without them.
Without them, you just have a pile of bricks, a jumble of words that are really hard to understand. They're the framework, really. Everything else built on top of them.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so mastering these, let's say 100-ish words, it's not the end goal, right? It's the starting line.
Absolutely. The Mastering English book is very clear, calling it just the beginning of your vocabulary journey.
So once you have this foundation nice and solid, what comes next? How do you keep building?
Yeah, the sources give some pointers there, too. Once that base is strong, vocabulary growth can feel a bit more organic.
How so?
Just lots of reading and listening. You'll naturally encounter new words in context. Another really efficient way is learning word families.
You mean like knowing create helps you with creation or creative?
Exactly. You get multiple words for the effort of learning one root.
Mm-hmm.
And also paying attention to collocations.
Words that often go together.
Right, like make a decision, not do a decision.
Yeah.
Learning those makes your English sound much more natural, more fluent.
Okay. So what does this all mean for you, our listener, if you're maybe feeling a bit swamped right now?
Hopefully it's a bit of relief.
Yeah. Hopefully it shows a clear starting point.
Yeah.
What we've seen from these sources is that by being strategic, by focusing on this core set and really working with them actively, you can actually understand a lot and start communicating much faster than you might imagine. It's about building that solid base.
A reliable foundation, yeah, which supports everything else you learn later. And it builds confidence, too, which is huge.
It's so important.
And, both resources really stress consistency and patience. It's not overnight.
Right. The Foundational Lexicon Guide probably talks about that, too, regular practice.
For sure. Short daily sessions are almost always better than, like, one massive cramming session once a week. It's gradual.
Right.
But focusing here first is just efficient.
Yeah.
It's a powerful way to kickstart the journey.
Okay, so let's sum it up. The big takeaways from this deep dive. Starting with that foundational lexicon, those high-frequency words, super smart, super efficient, gets you understanding and talking surprisingly fast.
Check.
But just looking at the list, not enough. You need active learning context, pronunciation, spaced repetition, actually using the words. That's how you make it stick.
Right. Active engagement is key.
And don't forget those little function words. They're the grammatical glue. And remember, mastering these first 100 or so words, that's just step one, an exciting step. But it takes consistent effort. Keep at it.
Well said. And maybe this raises an important question for you, the listener, to think about.
Oh, go on.
Well, considering that just a small number of foundational words can unlock so much understanding in language, where else in your learning, or maybe even your life, could you apply that? What are the core high-leverage skills or pieces of knowledge in other areas? Focusing on those foundational elements first. Could that be a shortcut to faster progress elsewhere, too?
That's definitely some food for thought, applying the 80-20 rule more widely. Interesting.
Something to consider.
All right, well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Really fascinating stuff. Until our next exploration.